Hey, let's talk 27 minutes with John Maakaron about the Hall of Fame game.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network. Indeed, your team every day on a Wednesday, April 23rd. Yes, tomorrow, April 24th, Thursday, the start finally of the NFL Draft. We thank you for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, I have been telling you that the man on the screen, if you're watching on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel, John Maakaron from All SI Lions, Detroit Sports Podcast, covers the Lions, does a great job. I figure we're doing draft coverage. John, this is a big day. The Detroit Lions, it gets announced. And for people like you and me that really know this stuff, the Lions are going to be playing July 31st in the dreaded Hall of Fame game against Jim Harbaugh and the LA Chargers. So first of all, good to see you. But yes, so we're preparing now for a very early start to the preseason.
Yeah, less than 100 days to Detroit Lions football. I think it's funny because I think many people that cover the NFL recognize there's a little bit of a lull period in the middle of June into July before training camp. But the NFL said, hey, we need big stories. We need, a football team that brings a lot of attention. Matt, that a lot of the Lions fans are going to travel to Canton, maybe make it a Pro Football Hall of Fame trip. Look, the game is going to be pretty much atrocious. You're going to see a lot of reserves. But in the end, it's another opportunity for the national media to talk about the Detroit Lions, which can't be really a bad thing.
No, and you bring up a good point. I just, from somebody, and I think you and I are kind of in the same school here, kind of old schoolers, like that game, you're right, the first 10 minutes is great. And then because it's so early and it's July 31st, I mean, to me, Dan Campbell, the last couple of years, has held out so many of his starters. I mean, I don't think you're going to see anybody very relevant in that game because it's so early. And then they're going to have a lull between weeks 1 and 2 in the preseason. Yes, cool getting pub and the marquee today, Lions Chargers, but man, from a football standpoint, it's not my favorite game to watch. And that field, the field's always messed up. It's always something.
No doubt. But for Lions fans, there's going to be a couple things I think to pay attention to. Look, you remember last year, the Texans and the Bears that got rained out. They didn't even finish the game. That's how kind of atrocious it ended up being. But for the Lions, I do think there's an opportunity for two players at least to kind of put some tape out there for the coaching staff. And that's one, Hendon Hooker. I think that the backup quarterback spot, a player that has kind of been taken, on the wrong side of at least some publicity because of the fact the team brought in Teddy Bridgewater, lowered him on the depth chart ahead of the playoffs last year. So you want to see how he kind of runs an offense. And then the other player, I think, that probably on the defensive side that needs to kind of showcase he can do anything is Broderick Martin. You want to see, hey, does he look like some fundamentals are getting more consistent? As general manager Brad Holmes kind of indicated, hey, we need to see something a little bit more consistent from Broderick Martin. So there'll be some young players that'll have an opportunity to showcase, and I think those two should take advantage of the opportunity, even though it's a meaningless game.
Look at you, already breaking down the Hall of Fame game. You have a point spread for us, John? What's going on here?
Lions -5.
Oh my God. All right. I'm holding you to that. All right. So here we are. We're sitting a day before the draft. Give me a sense of where you think Brad Holmes' head is right now. I know you were there last week when he met with the media, but how do you see the next 24 hours going before the Lions are kind of ready to get on the clock?
Yeah, relatively speaking, when you look at the Detroit Lions, Matt, you kind of know where the needs are. I expect the needs to be met. And I know Brad Holmes really likes to stamp home we're not a needs-based drafting team. But how convenient last year they ended up getting two cornerbacks when that ended up being a significant need. Let's just hope that the best player available will end up being an edge rusher or an offensive lineman. It's going to be really after the first 3-4 picks, when the draft starts, many people kind of are starting to expect a little bit of chaos. Half of the top 15 may end up wanting to trade back. Because of the level of prospect that's out there this year. I just don't think that, I could see a little bit of chaos in understanding that because there's not a great quarterback up there, that teams may just be willing to wheel and deal to maybe pick up additional assets. But for the Detroit Lions, I look at it from the basic perspective of I think the best player around 28 should potentially land to be either an edge rusher or an offensive lineman. In my latest mock draft for Lions on SI, I had it being an offensive lineman. I know the fan base is desperate. They're clamoring for the guy to play opposite of Aiden. I know the fan base is definitely wanting, I listen regularly to the podcast. I hear reporters say maybe they should get 2 edge rushers.
Yeah.
That much it's become a focal point. But to me, I look at it, and the reason why I came up with an offensive lineman in my last mock draft is I look at it like the biggest investment the Lions have made is at the quarterback spot. And if you're paying Jared Goff north of $50 million, and the last sight you've seen was him eating the turf at Ford Field, getting rocked by the Commanders, I think that's an investment you want to continue to pay attention to. And I would love it if at number 28, it's either Gray Zabel or Tyler Booker. If that opportunity is there and you can get one of the top offensive linemen, you take advantage.
I had it yesterday that I just mentioned. I think Gray Zabel is the safest pick they could take. I think no fan would go, what are we doing? His connection with the Lions, with Hank Fraley's son, what was his teammate the last couple of years at North Dakota State. I could see it. Real fast, I want to deep dive draft with you, but this JMO stuff, what's your take on it? And give me a percentage chance that you think he would somehow be traded tomorrow.
Yeah, I would give it 5%. Look, there's a lot of banter that takes place. This is normal speculation. When that kind of stuff gets reported, you look at it from a contract perspective, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that those discussions are happening because Jameson Williams is a good football player, viewed as an asset, an emerging talent, and that's going to be costly. And it was signaled by Dan Campbell when he said at a talk, I think at the owners' meeting, where he said, we got to get younger at wide receiver. Yeah. And then followed up with Matthew Golden showing up, a prospect you wouldn't expect maybe potentially to have an official meeting with the Lions because of his talents and things like that. So that ends up lending to when people ask, well, why would they bring in Matthew Golden? But at this point in time, Matt, let's look, like talking seriously, if the Lions were to deal Jameson Williams, you're going to need a blockbuster kind of package to move on from a first round pick, maybe a day 2 pick. I don't think a team is going to offer that, but look at the ramifications. If it ends up happening, that would signal that clearly Jared Goff would have a say in this type of move. You'd think that Brad Holmes would talk to Jared about making a move like this, taking a key weapon away, heading into a key season.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either. So that's why I think that it's normal draft banter, but the likelihood I would be shocked, contrary to what other writers write, I would be shocked if they made that move.
Free agency, give me a minute on that. What were your thoughts on the Lions? Obviously swapping out DJ Reed for Carlton Davis, losing Kevin Zeitler, all the re-signings. How did you assess what Brad Holmes did in free agency?
Yeah, predictably cautious, but not really too appealing. You look at it from a perspective of, all right, I think that this football team is in a position, Matt, this window can open and close just that quickly. I feel like they could have been a little bit more aggressive in identifying some talent based on what you hear about this draft. Maybe you could have went out and got another offensive lineman veteran. You could have went out and maybe been a little bit more aggressive with an edge rusher, but I understand the costs. And look, from the way in which the Lions communicate, they're open and honest. They know that there's some bills to pay and they're not going to break the books. They don't want to risk making mistakes on a big level externally. So they went with their own guys, and that's what we have to live with, even though I would have taken a couple more chances on some guys.
I still think there's some free agents left that maybe, and there's going to be some June 1 cuts too, that you're right. I think the Lions will still dip into that pool. We're talking to John Maakaron on Lions on SI, does a great job there. And of course, Detroit Sports Podcast. We'll get into the draft and some names that John is hearing and some of the guys that have come in and visited. Who could be there at 28? We'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Lions. As we told you earlier, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at FanDuel tomorrow night. Yes, the draft is going on, but also Game 3, Pistons and Knicks. from the LCA. So the playoffs are here. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. You want to do something with Cade Cunningham tomorrow night? You can do that. Jalen Brunson, you want to bet on how many times he flops? Put that out there. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets. Do it today. Lions on SI, Johnny Mack with us, joining the pod today. Locked On Lions. We will be with you tomorrow night after the Lions pick. We'll have a fresh show. There's no point, John, in doing a show tomorrow before the Lions make their selection. So great to have you. All right, draft-wise, you mentioned before about edge and offensive linemen. Give me some names at 28, guys that maybe you think could drop and maybe could be in Brad Holmes's Easter basket come tomorrow night.
Yeah, no doubt. You heard, and at this point in time, people are talking about it. There's going to be potentially a run on edge rushers. So a lot of the potential edge rushers might not be there, but there's hope potentially that maybe some offensive linemen could move up as well. So the names that you're hearing in terms of edge-wise, Donovan Ezuraku, I think that 16.5 sacks speaks for itself. Many people believe that he's a player that would come in and have some impact. And you just want competition with Marcus Davenport, because many people look, man, they don't trust that he can be there beyond game 2. So if you can get, if there's an edge rusher that you have high on your draft board, you take the opportunity to get him. I think a name that many people, and of course breaks my heart being that I'm a Spartan fan, is Derek Harmon. Played at Michigan State, finishes his college career at Oregon, and he's a player that many people rave about. They feel like maybe even a prospect that if the Lions decide to trade up might be worth it to move up and get. I think would fill the defensive tackle spot very much in a way that would make people kind of be a little bit calmer, knowing that Aleem McNeil is going to take some time to come back. Other names as well that you'd hope maybe potentially could fall. Jihad Campbell, the linebacker, I do think he's going to be up there, but injuries and things that you hear in his workouts, maybe some concerns may pop up. You hope maybe there's a chance that some teams may be a little bit concerned and he could fall. But the other ones that you hear, Nick Scourton, I think is an edge rusher that many people really respect and like as well. And like we talked about earlier, Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker, opportunities there. I just think that there's a great opportunity here, Matt, to get a player. And I think in the first round, at least, an impact player, someone to come in and compete to play right away. And if you can get that from pick 28, whether you decide to move up or maybe move down just a little bit back in the first round, I think there's an opportunity for this football team to get a good football player. I'm going to sleep easy no matter who they pick. I think if they make a selection in week 1 and on the first day, it should be okay.
It's interesting. You mentioned Scourton, you mentioned Ezuraku, just two unbelievable kids. And it's like, yeah, there were times that you went, is Scourton a first rounder? Ezuraku, maybe he's undersized and doesn't fit the Brad Holmes model like a Shamar Stewart would. But again, when we're talking about culture and you're around this team a lot, that's really important. Those are two kids that everybody loves and raves about. You hear their interviews and you figure maybe that fits the mold of just from a culture perspective, don't you think?
Yeah, no doubt. And that's what these top 30 visits really bring home to the Lions and their scouting department is get a chance to talk to them on the big board, throw some plays up there, see how fast they can recall some plays and schemes and adjustments. But here's the blessing about this opportunity is that if they don't take one, there's still some good players on day 2 as well. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, I think, is making some noise. Savion Jones, the LSU, is a talented edge rusher. A lot of people even are looking at Boise State. Ahmed Hassanian, I think, is out there too. So that's what's great is that these top 30 visits give the Lions a great chance to get a broad look at a lot of these prospects. And especially what's important too, Matt, is they get a chance to talk to the coaches in depth, especially with a new offensive and defensive coordinator. Getting a fresh look at these guys is very important.
John Maakaron with us, Lions on SI, Detroit Sports Podcast. I mentioned Shamar Stewart before and just what he's been able to do and how he's been able to play at A&M. Didn't put up the huge numbers, but man, that body type and his ability to go inside and play a little bit on the inside, on the interior as a D tackle and edge, that fits the mold of what, of Brad Holmes, doesn't it? Levi did that. Pascal does that. If he's there, obviously, I mean, do you think they take him number one, or do you think the prototype of like Ezraku Green for Marshall? Do you see that as being the Brad choice, or is it that guy like Stewart that kind of can play both inside and outside?
Yeah, I think it's intriguing, right? Because Davenport is that physical bull rusher. You could look at a Josiah Stewart, or you could look at other players as well, outside linebacker traditionally, to be able to set the edge and be able to play well in coverage. That's where the aspect of maybe getting two edge rushers comes into play. I like the idea of complementary pieces along the defensive line. You want the opportunity, when you look at a draft prospect, a player that can play at different spots as well, a little bit versatile, which is interesting too, because if the Lions do pass, I would think there's a little bit more confidence in a Mekhi Wingo, who's still on the roster, to have a chance to play a little bit more, and Derek Barnes being on the outside and using Jack Campbell as well. So there's intriguing options that the Lions do have, but I do think they would select him if he was there. I think Stewart is intriguing, but also to the Michigan contingent really showing out in the pre-draft workouts. Yeah. Everybody in town would find it interesting. I was shocked to hear that even Will Johnson, the defensive back, we were all looking at the defensive tackle and the edge rushers. Now you get a cornerback that's potentially there. I would be shocked if the Lions went cornerback, but you did hear, Harrison from Kentucky. So it's interesting, but I would be shocked if they went defensive back in the first round.
All right. How stunned would you be if at 28, you mentioned before, a Matthew Golden is there, an Emeka Egbuka is there, and, the kid from Missouri, Luther Burden? Would you be stunned if they took a receiver at 28?
No, but here's the thing. You look at it from the perspective of right now, impact in a season in which you're going on the road to play tough opponents. I understand it's important to give Jared Goff weapons, but you met with, I think, you can get value, I think, later in the draft. That's where I think that you look at it and you say, all right, the top three are pretty much set. You got, if Jamo's still on the roster, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamo, Tim Patrick, and Khalif Raymond, I think, are going to get a plethora of touches outside of the tight end, Sam Laporta, and your two running backs. So a wide receiver, I think that it's just, I think, overkill. But I do like the one that, a little bit later on, day 2 or day 3, Isaac Tesla, I just think fits perfectly as a big-bodied X that can do a lot of different things, could be in the slot and still get open, give Jared Goff a little bit more of an opportunity. Many people think that he's a perfect fit for the Detroit Lions. Golden's a little bit different in that, I like his game, but I don't think he's first round worthy with the team that still has more needs on defense and an offensive line. I would be a little bit surprised if that was the pick.
Interesting, though, that he was one of the top 30 visits, certainly for the Lions coming into Allen Park. And again, there were years when the Lions didn't bring Penei Sewell in here and ended up drafting him. And then other times they've had multiple visits with guys, whether it's at the Senior Bowl, the Combine, and they've made that happen. What other needs do you see, John? I know Dave Burkett, our buddy from the Free Press, has talked a lot about safety, that right now they only have Kirby Joseph, who, by the way, is up after this year, and Brian Branch. Do you see a scenario where at some point, not round 1 maybe, but 2 or 3, maybe even round 4, they would take a safety?
Yeah, I do. I feel like many people are hoping potentially Malachi Starks drops a little bit out of Georgia. I like his game. I like what he does. Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, I think, tests very well. Brad Holmes went out to Ann Arbor quite a bit. He definitely saw Texas, Oregon. He saw Andrew Mukaba out of Texas, the safety there that's really talented and I think has a high football IQ and definitely has the grit factor that you want. It's going to be interesting, right? The coming debates when these contracts come up are going to be very interesting, Matt, because many people start to say, okay, can you really keep Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph? I think they could if Brian Branch doesn't want to break the bank. I don't think he's going to have a market-setting contract like a Kirby Joseph, because Joseph's coming off of 9 interceptions. And the idea is when you have a ball-hawking talent like that, you expect him to be around 6 to 10 interceptions on a yearly basis. So, a guy potentially that could replace Brian Branch probably in the mix, and at depth too, maybe not even as a replacement too, because you have, those 2 top safeties, but you don't have a lot of depth behind those two. And I know not a lot of people talk about it because of the fact he's so popular, but Alex Anzalone's playing on his last year.
Yeah.
And so he's an aging veteran. So I expect the Lions to potentially seek out a very talented linebacker in this draft. You look at it and you say, all right, look what Alex Anzalone brings. He's such a force, a leader. You're going to need opportunities to go out there and replace that. And you haven't heard yet. I would expect maybe because of, his stature and what he did, maybe to get that one extra year beyond 2025. I would be shocked if he goes into training camp on his last year. You don't typically like to do that with a player of that caliber, but it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table in regards to linebacker too, because there's so many good ones that you see that could come in.
All right, coming up next, I want to ask John about a little debate that was on his site. Some folks thinking, including his man Vito, that the Lions could trade into the top 12 to move up. Who would Brad Holmes be targeting? We'll ask John that coming up next. And our friends at Amazon Fire TV bring you Locked On Lions today. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Plus or Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles: EA Sports, College Football 25, Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and AvaWed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. They got all the latest technology for elevated playing with Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology. Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive game playing with lightning fast speeds that you need to stay competitive. Plus, it's affordable. You get the portable gaming. You've got it all. Seriously, it's great. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Lockdown to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. John Maakaron with us from Lions on SI. Does a great job. Stuff is always fresh and there, and appreciate John's support of Locked On Lions as well. Anytime that we have something big going on, John's always on there, and appreciate having you here today, John. All right, so Vito from your site was writing the other day, hey, look, Brad Holmes could move all the way up to maybe 11. Do you see a scenario where Brad does it again and is moving up to get aggressive, and who would he be targeting, do you think?
Yeah, and that's what it's interesting, right? Because everybody wants to really peek at what Brad Holmes does, and he tends to be aggressive. Has moved up, and he's willing to move up. I think this draft, for me, if I was to make a prediction, I would say they just move up maybe into the early 20s, 2021, if they find the guy that they feel, because they don't want to give up too much capital. There's already around, I think, the 5th round where they don't have a pick.
Right.
So, but look, I expect Brad Holmes to make a lot of moves, to wheel and deal, move up, because in terms of capital, the Lions are picking 28th in every round. You want to maybe move up a little bit to be able to select better talent. So if the Lions are able to find that player and the compensation's fair and Brad Holmes wants to make a deal, I think the player that Vito indicated and one in which many draft analysts, when you talk to them in conference calls or just in messaging, they indicate that Jalen Walker, the linebacker / edge out of Georgia, is the guy. They say he's the perfect fit for Kelvin Shepard's defense. And I understand why. High motor, very bright, can get to the football, good in zone coverage, good in coverage. Definitely the number one thing you want to see with a prospect, a willing tackler, not going to shy away from contact, and really good fundamentals against the run. And that's the first thing you see with the Lions defense is they want to maintain the ability to be stout against the run. That's the starting point. And he's got strength. He's got everything you would want in a player at that spot. But here's the thing. Here's the blessing. And we talked about it earlier in regards to maybe a potential replacement for Anzalone. There's a name out of Penn State that pay attention to, I think, would be very much welcomed here in Detroit. Kobe King, the local product, I think fits. If you can get him in round 5 through 5, 6, I think he fits perfectly as a late round value option that people can say, okay, you know what? Penn State, also known to develop linebackers at a very proficient rate. So if there's a player that the Lions feel, hey, we want him, they'll try and make the move. That's one thing that Brad Holmes has not shied away from.
Oh, yeah.
They even traded up for Broderick Martin. So you know that if they like a guy, if they identify in the work that they do, and it's extensive in terms of meetings, psychology, love of football in the community, if they find a guy that they say, hey, this is a guy that fits, they try to get him.
I wonder if Tyler Booker could be also a target, like you said, if it's early 20s and they want to leapfrog Minnesota and Green Bay, who's
Right.
obviously they're fighting within the division to get him. I see that as a scenario too. What do you think?
Yeah, no doubt. I think a lot of mock drafts also have him kind of slide it to the Texans as well, who need an offensive lineman to protect Stroud. So Booker's going to be interesting to see how the draft shakes out. So like Brad Holmes said, you and I, we're going to get our popcorn ready. I'll be at Allen Park bringing everything to Lions on SI and to the masses. So it's going to be great to see what the Lions do to fill their needs. And this draft, look, is important. I know the buzz wasn't there, but this draft can help if the goal is clearly the goal is to win a Super Bowl. But if you're adding sustained success, then a draft of this magnitude is important because you're going to have some decisions to make. And I know people don't want to talk about it, but 2 or 3 blue bloods that fans really like could be on their way out the door in 2026.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that they've got to keep and try to re-sign and retain. Like you said, you can't keep everybody. That's why a lot of this JMO talk, there's a lot of smoke right now. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to trade him right now. I think they want to go into this season with the best possible roster that they can. I haven't had you on since, but all the coaching changes, the John Morton move, the Shepard move, how did you assess all of that?
Yeah, look, great continuation with Kelvin Shepard. He's going to bring the nasty attitude that this defense wants, basically groomed by Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell targeted him when he first got here, and a former Lion understands the culture and is somebody that has just quickly elevated through the coaching ranks. I expect him to be a future NFL head coach. John Morton is the question mark because of his failed stint with the Jets. How does he relate to the players? How does he call games in the crunch time? Because look, it's easy to scheme during the week, but how do you match up against one of these elite defensive coordinators like a Vic Fangio who's got so many years experience, who knows your tendencies, who knows how to adapt against you? That's what I'm curious to see. Is I think the Lions will be supremely prepared on offense, and the talent gives John Morton an edge. But those key things, because you started to see a little bit of warts with Ben Johnson in those short yardage situations, a little bit too cute. Look, 3rd down and 1, we don't need empty sets and passes. We don't need those kind of calls, especially in big games. This is the Detroit Lions with a stout offensive line. 3rd down and 1, you hand the ball off to Montgomery, and then 4th and inches, you hand the ball off to Montgomery or Gibbs. You don't need all this cuteness that Ben Johnson started to bring to the table later in his tenure.
Oh, John, a little shots fired at Ben Johnson. I like that. A little, you got to keep that. We got to keep that rivalry going. You know how I feel about the Bears, so I love that. John, great to see you. Good luck with all the coverage we'll be reading, and appreciate the time.
And same to you, Matt. Locked On Lions, been around, a staple in the internet podcast community. Thank you for what you do, a man of your stature, continuing to cover the Lions on a daily basis, in depth, great guests. I'm a regular listener, and I appreciate everything that you do as well. But everybody visit Lions on SI. I appreciate just being a small part of the Detroit sports community. And look, I love podcasting and where it's come, and it's given me an opportunity to cover the team in-depth, insider analysis from Allen Park will be coming over the next 3 days.
John Maakaron, folks, check out his stuff. It's a Wednesday Locked On Lions. We are with you tomorrow night following the draft, night 1.